The heart of Evangelion beats inside of every single Trigger production. Whether that's a homage or a hindrance, well, that's up to you. As a lifelong Evangelion fan, I've always found these tributes to be of the utmost importance, as if the staff of Gainax Old and Trigger New are unwilling to let its influence die. And while Eva's popularity has gone on to spawn passable and poignant copycats industry-wide, it always comes back home to Trigger. To the Franxx, to the Academy, to the system, to the wizardry, and now to the junk shop, where I'd argue that Eva lives and breathes in a way that it has never done before. A true homage, not a hindrance, as the heart of Evangelion beats inside of Access Code SSSS Gridman. Before we can even begin to compare the two, we must first look at Evangelion itself. The brainchild of Hideki Aino, this 26-episode mecha masterwork is widely credited as anime's rebirth. And while Eva has been rebirthed itself many times over, the original stands the test of time, even if its main character constantly tests me. I suppose that was the point. Up until Eva, I'd been fed a diet of happy-go-lucky, determined shonen protagonists, so Shinji, this weak and broken boy with daddy issues, was a far cry from my Gokus and Yos. Yet what kept me watching in the beginning was its humour and Saturday morning-esque monster fights. Because after all, Evangelion was just a Monster of the Week show. Until it wasn't. Gridman is just a Monster of the Week show. Until it isn't. This is its most defining yet perhaps most vague comparison, its misleading beginnings and split storylines. The first 5 episodes of Gridman involve us meeting its wide cast of characters and in the end taking down a kaiju. The first 12 episodes of Evangelion involve us meeting its wide cast of characters and in the end taking down an angel. It's a fun, vibrant monster fight wherein both, if you pay attention, has some dark undertones. But in the beginning, it plays on its lightheartedness and humour, wrapping you up in a safety blanket before suffocating you with it. Granted, as of the time of making this video, Gridman is still airing, so whether it takes the soul-crushing route of Evangelion's final half remains to be seen. But in episode 6, it's already proven that it might.
この町の外には何もないよ。
どういうこと?
Outside the city, there is nothing. That can't be. We've been outside of it, right? This is where we take that shift, just as Eva did before it, as if all the information we've been given up until now is slowly coming together. And you've been paying attention, right? To every frame, every shot, every discarded comment and throwaway scene, it's all vital to understanding Gridman, because it's loath to hold your hand through its story. And I really appreciate this approach to storytelling. I've thrown this phrase out in a review before, but the idea of a world existing without the existence of me is the best way to build a world. Often in anime, we're subject to unnatural conversations that explain plot points, the environment, and other characters. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I love a lot of anime that's guilty of this, but it's a breath of fresh air when a production lets its audience think for itself. When a production asks its audience to take notice, to analyse, and to come up with conclusions without being told them directly. I can't tell whether this was a subconscious decision by Akira Amamiya, but it's certainly something it shares strongly with Evangelion. And while both its smart take on storytelling and divergent storylines are the more underlying influences it shares with Eva, there are plenty of obvious ones as well, as early as episode 1.
あ、起きた。
The sound of cicadas emulating the summer heat, a variety of establishing shots to open up its world before you even know what exists within it. and sound design perhaps being the biggest key player of all. From the gurgle of the angel moving through water to the chatter of the students in the school, it's through each anime's key use of sound that we get a sense of the environment we're being pulled into. A world that favours sound over soundtrack. That's not to say music doesn't exist in either show, but it's not background music. The OST hits for impact, to lift scenes both funny and intense. Unbeknownst to us, it's tuning our ear, so that when the music does come in, we are alert and pay attention. This is something that comes straight from Hideki Aino's directorial style, and as we jump into Gridman's animation, Amamiya's love of Eva practically screams at us on screen. Ayano has always been a fan of the lingering shot, the elongated establisher, and Amamiya takes this approach directly to Gridman. We're treated to many instances of this as the series develops, even in the episodes where Amamiya hasn't taken directorial charge. His influence, and subsequently Ayano's, bleeds through the production. This includes direct frame sharing, and my favourite moment of all, the recreation of the famous elevator scene. A production faux pas, or a genius piece of directing? Well, that's up to you to decide. But Eva's 53-second elevator scene in episode 22 has become almost as synonymous with the series as its mecha fights. The camera is completely locked off, with only the sound of the elevator rising and Asuka's blinking as markers that the screen hasn't frozen. And this snapshot speaks volumes, when there is no speaking at all. Gridman goes on to pay homage to this, twice. First in the opening episode when Rika's friend Torakawa hits the special dog out of Hibiki's hands. While the shot that follows isn't still, it is long. The camera pulls out from a static scene, the characters are frozen moment in time for 10 seconds. Not quite the length of the elevator scene, but long enough to make its audience fidgety and the perfect amount of time to build suspense. I felt like I was holding my breath as these scenes played out, waiting in anticipation to see what would happen next. Eva takes a more dramatic approach, with Asuka exploding at Rei, whereas Gridman lets his tension dispel. Hibiki quickly going on to eat his smoosh special dog, and the only hint of tension remaining in Akane's face. For me, near silence is so effective when it's used like this, and near silence comes into play again in the elevator scene's second homage. If we look at the framing of Asuka and Rei, the latter is much closer to the camera. This is emulated in episode 4 of Gridman. Akane, frustrated that she can't get information about Hibiki out of Rika, leaves the karaoke party and heads for the elevator. She is standing almost identically to where Rei stands in Eva. The scene holds for around 6 seconds before we switch to a close-up of Akane, but the throwback of Evangelion remains. So much so that the dead space in the elevator feels like it's waiting for Asuka. And we're not done yet. It's no secret that Ayano has a great love of fight scenes, so while our mechs take such a different shape here, the fascination for explosions carries over into Amamiya's Gridman. Granted, we've moved to CG over 2D, but I'd argue that the action more than packs a punch. Good CG is barely noticeable, or at least forgivable, if you put your cameras in the right place. Gridman's opening fight mostly takes place at ground levels, so we're able to see the scale of our fighters. Although this is more a nod to good storyboarding than it is in relation to Evangelion. But back to Eva. There is influence to be found in Gridman's heavy use of power lines, a firm favourite of Ayano's, and of course the team name for Gridman's assist weapons, Neon Genesis Junior High Students. If that's not an obvious reference, I don't know what is. It feels like I've barely scratched the surface, that there's so much more left to be said, such as the parallels in the use of experimental direction, and that neither director seems afraid to bare their soul and think outside the box. But at this point, I could go on forever, because after all, Evangelion is my favourite anime of all time, and that sentiment is quite clearly shared by Akira Amamiya, his crew, and by my co-editor on this video, Mr. Nice Guy. Together, I hope that we've shown you that 23 years on, Evangelion is as impactful now as it ever was, that its greatness is still being borrowed and built upon. And while its influence has directly affected the tone and direction of Gridman, that's not to say the show doesn't stand up on its own. It's a real love letter to craft, written to those who enjoy cinematography, editing, sound design, and everything else that goes so underappreciated in anime. Of course, this is a trigger show. There are many other pop culture references and influences living on inside of it. But for us, Evangelion stood out strongest of all, as if the heart of this timeless show beats on in Studio Trigger's SSSS Gridman.